Hi, I'm Wendy Yi. Welcome to the Dice Tower.
I'm Chris Yi.
And today we will be reviewing Astro Knights. This is by Indie Boards and Cards.
This is designed by Nick Little and Will Sobel. Nick Little, who is one of the people who worked on Aeon's End. I mentioned that because this is a reimplementation of Aeon's End. Cooperative, deck building, don't shuffle your deck, fight the big beastie monster thing, and try to win as a team.
Yep.
This is very much like Aeon's End.
It is.
To let you know.
So let me show you how it's played. Astro Knights is a cooperative deck building game where players each have individual characters that they play, individual decks that they grow, while all trying to defeat some sort of large bad guy up here and protect their home and their own health. Astro Knights has a randomized turn structure, so these are the turn order cards. They consist of 2 per player, including the boss, and they will be turned over one at a time. The player will take its turn, and so forth in that order. Once they have all been completed, if the game is not over yet, you simply reshuffle the deck and start over again, starting with the next turn. Let's first talk about the boss. Now, every boss is going to be different depending on what game you play with, but the general concepts are you'll have a boss board, you'll have a boss deck, and usually some sort of secondary deck going on. Down here is any minions that come out to play. They will stay there until they have been removed and killed. On a boss's turn, first you will activate anything that's shown to activate down here, and then you will flip the top card of the boss deck. You'll go ahead and do whatever it says, and that is the boss's turn. Now let's talk about what happens on a turn. So you will have a hand of cards in front of you, as well as anything that's already slotted. At the beginning of your turn, you will set off any weapons that you slotted previously, so this would be to deal a damage to either the main boss or one of its minions. Then you can slot any additional cards you want up here, up to your slot value. So I have 3 in hand, but those are pretty useless right now. I can then spend any money that I gain from these fuel cards, and I can use those to purchase stuff from the market. I then discard anything that I played, as well as anything else that I want to not hold on to. This blaster's super minor, I'll get rid of that, but I'll keep the sonic needle. Then at the end of your turn, you'll go ahead and draw up. When you need to shuffle, instead of shuffling, you simply flip over the deck of the card in the same order that it was in the discard pile, and you continue to draw up to 5. Players continue to play until the end game has been triggered, and that is done by either dying, which is where the city comes down to 0, or both players' health are down to 0, or you can win by defeating the villain and getting their health down to 0. All right, Chris, I want to emphasize how much this is like Aeon's End.
Yeah, if you're not familiar with Aeon's End, sorry. We're going to try to review this as a product, but also we're going to be spending time comparing the two.
So very, very much. Like this, I look at it and I think, oh, this looks just like Aeon's End. It's got, the player boards are a little bit different, the bosses slightly different, mostly just ease of setup, but a lot of it is the same.
And that's what they went in doing intentionally, right? This is streamlined. There's less setup. There's not as many steps to set up the boss deck. That's a great thing. You don't have to choose a fixed market of 9 different types of cards. You have the 6 out there instead. And so setting up the game is quite quick. You have asymmetric player powers, but they're a little bit less asymmetric than I think your average Aeon's End Breach Mage and everything.
And I think they're a little bit easier to earn, like leveling up those power tracks.
Yeah. So this is clearly made to be a new entry point, right? There's like 5, 6, 7 Aeon's End boxes. And so this is kind of a new entry point. So I want to try to review this both as hey, you might say, hey, look, a fun kind of good entry-level cooperative deck-building game. But then we're also going to make the comparisons, as we are both very seasoned Aeon's End players. We played a lot of it. So how do we want to tackle this?
I want to talk about some of the things that I appreciate. That happen in this, and it is partially because I'm comparing it to Aeon's End. But I like that it is a quicker setup. I like that the boss comes in a little box. You throw him out. He's got his 2 decks. He's ready to go. The market cards is something that I'm a little bit on the fence about.
Okay.
I like the ease of setup with it. So I didn't explain in the overview, but the market cards, they are different, and you basically just pull out a stack and you say, like, this is 1 stack of market cards, and there's like 2 copies of each card in there, but it's a variety of things, all kind of in the same price range, and you have 6 stacks of those. And it's one thing to have that really quick setup that I really enjoy, but then on the other hand, you're going to see those same cards every single time.
Now, there's a few ways that deck building games typically can do this type of thing. You can either have fixed piles of cards where you have, hey, 10 copies of the same card in this pile, right? The original deck building game Dominion to the Aeon's End is that. You could have just a random market of 5 cards or so. A lot of deck building games do that. Ascension, DC Deck Builder,
Just like
Marvel
one
Legendary.
giant deck, just kind of...
Yeah. This is kind of a nice marriage between the two.
I agree.
You saw something sort of similar in like Paperback, right? This isn't the first game to do it, but it is a neat idea to say, hey, this stack is cheaper fuel, cheaper money cards. This one is more expensive money cards. There's 3 gradations of weapons, cheap, middle, and most expensive. And I think that's a good, clean way to do it. Like you said, it is tremendously easy on the setup, easier to jump into, gives you some variety throughout the game. And so you sometimes look at the top card of a pile and you go, I don't want that. I don't need it. And so there are some card effects that, if they show up, will let you remove the top card off of the deck and then put it onto the bottom.
And I think that's a cool little effect that can happen there. Now, I fully expect this to be expanded out the wazoo, as Aeon's End has been in the past.
Almost every deck building game.
Yeah, I just expect
multiple expansions.
I just expect lots of that. And so I could see these stacks having other stacks optional, basically. You could have some lower priced cards and you're like, oh, do I want A stack, B stack, or C stack of lower priced cards? One thing with comparing to Aeon's End is that each individual card has its own stack, and you put enough sets together and you just feel like you're looking through 100 different possible cards and you're like, which gem would I like? What money card would I like? I don't know. So having a fewer things to go through, but still having that expandability, variety, I could see that being a very positive thing.
Yeah. I enjoy the idea of this no shuffle deck building system, right? You buy cards, the order that you fire off cards, your weapons, and then you buy them, and then the cards that you played go in that order, and you can kind of, if you really want to be thoughtful about it, you can make sure that you're stacking your deck in the most favorable way possible. I think that's good. That's a good strategic decision point, which is what I've enjoyed about the previous games, and being the previous game. This one has that same core system, so your gameplay is a very thoughtful, less random deck building kind of a situation. That is 100% ported over for sure, and I think that they do that well. The bosses, I guess, okay. There's a mix between the bosses and the knights, the Astro knights. I want to call them breach mages, right?
Those are the player characters.
Your players.
Yeah, basically.
Do you feel like you get a good mix in this core box?
I'm usually not a fan of characters. So there's 2 characters that are strong at fighting, 2 characters that are good at ally helping. So basically, I power up so that you can get stuff. And there's a couple good characters that are at healing. So I think that that's an interesting combination. It's fascinating that they chose 2 of each type. They're different, but 2 of each type was kind of an interesting move.
I think that it feels very much like a base box. These characters are not tremendously interesting. One of them heals 5 health. Okay. One of them allows the other player to draw some cards and trash one.
Yeah.
That's good. I prefer the ones that are a little bit more odd and have some kind of cool ability than heal 5 health. That's okay. The ones that are fire off a weapon twice without discarding it, because normally once you fire off weapons, I love the stuff like that. And I think that that's my bias as a very experienced deck building and game player.
You want something a little bit more interesting?
I don't want heal 5 damage, but I have to keep in mind this is an entry box. This is a starter pack.
This is meant to be, hey, you haven't done this before. Let's start you out.
Yes, and I think that there's going to be a crux of the issue. If you were very experienced coming into this game, saying, I know the system it's based on, that's almost going to kind of work against you. The 4 bosses that come in the box, 2 of them feel like the first 2 recommended one, the level 2 and the level 5 difficulty, 2, 5, and 8.
They're very vanilla.
8. They're a bit more vanilla and similar-ish to each other. And then the level 8 difficulty, the more difficult ones feel very different. One makes you discard a bunch of cards. Which I don't love that effect loop.
Feels so mean.
Yeah.
Another one kept healing.
And I love that.
All the time.
I love that one.
That was such an interesting arc for me. I think that was definitely the most interesting one. this idea of like the boss is healing before I can even do any damage to it. How am I going to build myself up and survive? I thought that was very fascinating.
A boss that starts at 40 health and you're like, all right, we got this. It heals 15, like an opening move.
Yeah.
And you're like, can it heal above starting health? Oh, it can?
Yeah.
It got up to like 80 something, and then you have to just start powering up and getting so strong that you're punching down harder than
it can heal.
Than it's healing up.
Yeah.
That's a fun arc. And so kind of like the Marvel United base box, like that came with 3 villains. 2 of them were very similar to each other and so vanilla. And I think that the fun of this game is having wildly different bosses to fight against, and I didn't feel that in this core box. That is a slight negative for me, once again knowing that I'm coming from a place of much more experience and wanting to find something novel and different. But I have to respect, okay, vanilla is good for entry
What is this?
points.
For entry point for base level box, which is why I'm going to give this a 7.
Okay.
I think that this is very good at what it does, what it's expected. So coming into it as that very entry level, like we're expecting vanilla, we're expecting an introduction, we're expecting a very clean, quick setup, and all that Aeon's End is down to kind of its core elements and its core feels. I think that it did that really well. So I think a 7 is just a good, solid score for me.
Yeah, I'm going to be a 7.5. It's interesting to see that we came pretty similar to each other. This didn't knock my socks off, but the fact that so many systems are just cleaner and quicker. You want more weapon slots? You pay $3, you have a guaranteed slot.
And it's permanent. You don't like lose it until you've clicked it 5 times.
Right. If you've not played Aeon's End, gaining a new weapon slot is like a multi-turn process, whereas this one is like, I paid $3. I can hold more weapons now. Awesome, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing is like every decision that they could basically to simplify multi-step processes into one step, that was done here. I think my favorite part that is the one like really novel thing that stands out to me, which impresses me, is that there's the technology deck that you can pay the cost of the card on the top of the technology deck, activate it once, tuck it on the bottom. So you don't have to buy that and put it into your deck. And I think, ooh, I like that. That's like a new, slightly novel thing that I haven't seen in too many other deck building games. And I like that. I'd like to see that kind of expanded upon or something. So I'm happy to see I'm happy to see there's at least one like new thing.
Now, there was something that Chris and I wanted that wasn't in this box, and that was the turn order cards are still cards. So you have to shuffle them after every like 8 turns. And it's just silly that it hasn't progressed to something else. Like we played with just some tokens that we had laying around.
From
We put them in a
Arkham
bag,
game. Yeah.
And we just threw them in a bag, and we're like, "This is so much better."
Yeah,
pull some tokens out.
And you complained a lot. You're like, that sounds really negative. You complained a lot though about you're like, I wish that it was just in like a normal turn order at this point.
That's true. I do wish that it was just a normal turn order. There's a little bit more of that like planning. I get what they're trying to do though. They want it to have that sense of you don't know what's coming, so you can't perfectly plan it out and time it out.
I'm almost surprised that they didn't cut that from this one just to make it
Just
more
for simplicity?
basic. Yeah, but I still like that element of it. So I don't know. Overall, I think this is a successful box. If this is going to be an entry point for you into like cooperative deck building, I think this is a pretty solid one.
It is indeed. Well, thanks for joining us today. I'm Wendy Yi.
And I'm Chris Yi.
We're the Dice Tower, and have fun fighting those big boss monsters. Yeah.